Welcome to Saute and Study. Hey everyone, welcome to my first video of many, a soon-to-be series where I document my culinary projects both in and out of the kitchen, with the occasional video about academics. Here, me and my roommate Arnold are preparing to make a pasta. I plan to make a beef ravioli with a vodka sauce.
I don't really need it to be cinematic now. Wait, watch this. Wait, chill.
Ignore that. Moving on to my prep, I did drop like 3 cloves of garlic.
Rest the dough for 30, always knead for 15 minutes.
I asked you 15 originally, you said you didn't know.
No, you rest for 30.
No, I asked you if I needed to knead it for 15, and you said you didn't know.
Well, not really, because yours was already coming out nice. It's smooth. Well, once it's smooth, you stop. Because you can over knead it.
Yeah.
Hope that recipe works. I never got to make that.
The pasta?
Yep.
So,
It should work though.
why did you describe the way the recipe felt if you never made the recipe?
After prepping my garlic, I move on to my bell peppers. I'm going to be using a red one here and then a green one to keep it as clean as possible. To avoid unnecessary seeds getting around, I roll cut my pepper, and then I began to cut off my trim for scrap. These are like the less pretty pieces that I could still utilize in my beef filling. So I'm cutting off the edges of the top, and I'm going to put this in compost. Privacy break. I'm going to follow the same process from my green bell pepper. And any pieces that don't look nice, I'm going to be adding to my scrap. Privacy break. I first peel in half a large white onion with some magic, but I ended up running out of magic, so I have to finish small dicing it with the ugly bits going into the beef filling. Privacy break. I also had an egg white left over from the pasta dough, so I went ahead and added that in as well. I then blanched some spinach and dried it off with a paper towel, and I put it in after drying it. Then I seasoned my beef filling after adding everything in and set it aside. Privacy break. Here I'm prepping the main event. I kneaded my pasta dough for about 15 minutes before my prep, and then I let it rest for 30 minutes as I worked on other things. Here my roommate's wrapping it for me. Here I'm finishing the prep I did to start my sauce. I began by sauteing my garlic until it was just golden brown, followed by my onions until they sweat, and then my bell peppers. And finally, my tomatoes. I also blended up some of my remaining tomatoes and onions that I had left over with some heavy cream, adding hot water from the spinach bath. And then I finally seasoned my sauce and let it simmer for about 30 minutes. After stirring my sauce and mixing the seasonings in, we went on to sectioning out my pasta dough. We missed some footage, but I rolled out my dough after letting it rest for 30 minutes, and I rolled it out until it was just see-through. I floured my workspace with the help of my roommate, and then I started to line up my cuts so I could begin making my pasta. I squared out the awkward circle and sat my scraps to the side to be used later in the extra segment at the end of the video. I then cut my pasta into rectangles. I started to stretch their ends a bit and lined up the 2 pieces, and I sat my top half to the side, and I got a small cup of water to help seal the edges later. I sat that side to the side as well. I began to scoop about 2 ounces of filling onto my bottom sheet, leaving just about 2 fingers of space between each ball of filling and 2 fingers between the edges as well. It was a perfect day in the kitchen today, I'd say. It's about once in a blue moon that the kitchen is empty and free. But I'm also making this ravioli today because it's a way to clean out my fridge because I'm getting ready to head back for break. After finishing lining up my sheet with my beef filling, I then prepared to add my top layer. I stretched it out just a little bit more, started stretching the edges a little more as well, just to make sure I had enough coverage so I could seal my raviolis. To seal it, I added a little bit of water along the border of the pasta. I should have added water in between each of the beef fillings, but I didn't think to do that. But I just did a little bit of water filling there on the edges, as you can see. But if you do make this, try to put water in between each of the beef raviolis. I then began to seal my edge by crimping it with a fork. Honestly, my technique was a bit messy at first. It was a bit tricky, but I got the hang of it, and I went for slightly larger ones because I thought they would be more fun to look at and better on a plate. I got about 15 raviolis in total. I had a bunch of filling left over, which I did something with in the extra segment at the end of the video. But right about now, I'm starting to finish crimping my edges, and then I'm going to start to divide my raviolis. I'm pressing down a little bit to kind of press the pasta in place so the air gaps don't end up popping when I'm cutting it and making it harder to seal for me. My roommate's helping me here. I use my bench scraper. It's kind of bent at the end, so I can't really get too straight of a cut. You can kind of see it droop off at the end, which is kind of silly. But I separate them and I begin to pull them apart, starting with sets of 2. I was thinking about serving them like that, but I decided not to. Overall, this process was really fun. I got to do it with my new friends I met at school. The pasta was really pretty. Like, I liked the yellow color we got. I think it was more yellow because we used a little more eggs in our dough. I think that honestly helped them come out a little nicer. I got a pretty good one right here. I think that was my best one. I did end up eating it immediately after I boiled it. This is a cool little shot of me breaking the 2 pieces into segments. And now I'll just let you watch me finish up, and then we'll carry on in a moment. Here's all the raviolis finished and prepped, and a little while ago I started boiling a pot of water. I then walked my raviolis over, and I went ahead and did them all at once because I'll be finishing them in my sauce, and I honestly just thought my pot was big enough for it. I let them boil in the hot water for about 3 minutes, and I salted the water to help with the pasta and help it heat up a little faster. I'm a little slow dropping these pastas in. I should have just dumped them, but I was kind of scared they'd explode. To keep them from sticking to the bottom of the pan and to help them cook a little more evenly, since there was beef filling inside of them, I stirred them and I tried to keep the water constantly spinning because it would help them cook a little faster. And it did. It worked pretty well. I then bring my saucepan over. I set it to the side. I'm trying to get a little bit of that pasta water in as well, so I don't really mind that I'm not really letting it drain off because I'm trying to use it to help thicken my sauce. After getting the last of the raviolis in, I do try to toss this pot because after a brief stir, I realized I'm not going to be able to fold this. So I do toss it, and I do spill a little bit of sauce. I did clean that up later, don't worry. And here we have the final result I plated about 3 raviolis in this bowl, and I finished it with a little bit of Parmesan cheese. And now we're moving on to the extra segment. Here I'm going to have my roommate talk a little about what he did in the kitchen that night.
Hi, I'm Arnold, and I was making a potato gnocchi with a Tuscan cream sauce here. And it's just simmering right there, and here's a view of the gnocchi. So here is the final product. It's the whole dish, and I roasted the tomatoes myself from the beginning, and those were roasting for about an hour or so. And I also sauteed some spinach in there with some garlic and some spices and the cream and Parmesan cheese, and just let that reduce, and the cream thickened.
And here I have what I did with my extras. I had a lot of beef filling left over, a little bit of sauce left over, and some pasta trimmings. So I decided to go ahead and make a fettuccine. I used some tongs to spiral it. And then I plated the fettuccine. And while I was boiling my fettuccine, I was also using my beef ravioli filling to make meatballs. I decided to go for a single large meatball because I thought it would be a little nicer on the plate. And I tossed the pasta and a little bit of that chunky vodka sauce I made. And I put a little on top of the meatball. And that's with a little Parmesan cheese. Thank you for joining me on Saute and Study. Please like and subscribe.